"We can't afford to include your kids," Aunt Marjorie said, tapping her pen against the notepad like she was sealing a verdict. We were crammed around my cousin's kitchen island, the annual vacation committee, pretending it was about togetherness instead of spreadsheets. "The house is expensive, 15 grand for the week," she went on, eyes skimming the columns she'd built. "We calculated per-person costs very carefully. Adding 3 more would blow everyone's budget. Maybe you sit this one out." From the living room doorway, I could see my kids' faces reflected in the dark TV screen. Hazel's grin wilted first, then Finn's, then little Lottie's, like someone had pinched the air out of them. They'd been whispering about tide pools and boardwalk fries for months. Now they were doing that fast, silent math children do. Wanted versus unwanted. I kept my hands folded in my lap so I wouldn't grip the edge of the counter and splinter it. Around the island, heads dipped and eyes slid away. No one argued. No one offered to cover a share. They just let Marjorie's practical land on my children like a wet towel. "Okay," I said, and my voice surprised me by staying level. "We'll stay home." Marjorie's smile turned soft, the way people smile when they're proud of their own cruelty. "Good. It's nothing personal." "Nothing personal," she said, as if you could ever erase 3 kids with a calculator and call it neutral. I stood, gathered coats, gathered my children, and walked out into the cold evening without a fight, because I already knew something my aunt didn't. The beach house she'd rented for her exclusive family week was mine. I told the kids the truth in the car after their crying went thin and tired. "We're still going to the ocean," I said. "Just not with them." Hazel blinked. Finn sniffed. Lottie stared at my hands on the wheel like they belonged to someone braver. The secret started with my grandmother, Eleanor Rowe, the quiet kind of woman who could hush a room without raising her voice. When I was 12, she took me to the Maine coast for a week. Just us, one rented cottage, and a porch that faced open water. She taught me how to read the tide line, how to pry periwinkles from rock without hurting them, how to let salt wind dry your tears. On our last night, she pressed a small brass key into my palm. "For a door you haven't seen yet," she said. "Keep it close." After she died, the family did what it always did, divided the public parts, furniture, savings, the Pennsylvania house. Marjorie chaired the meeting, solemn and satisfied. Then an attorney I'd never met called me privately. There was a second file, he said. A trust funded long ago. A beach house on Crescent Lane, Sandpiper Cottage, kept off everyone's radar on purpose. It was mine. So was the money to keep it mine. I stayed quiet for 5 years. I let Marjorie lecture about fair shares. I let cousins pity me with their practiced faces. Then, 3 days after the exclusion, my phone chimed. Booking confirmed. Sandpiper Cottage, July 15th. 22. Party of 18. Guest. Marjorie Hale. I stared until my shock thinned into something like joy. I called my property manager and said, "Don't cancel, don't warn her. I'll greet them myself, for once, my terms." July arrived. The night before the booking, I drove up with my kids, and the brass key Grandma Eleanor had pressed into my palm. At dawn, we stood on Sandpiper Cottage's porch. "Is it really ours?" Hazel asked. "It's mine," I said, "and it's ours to be safe in." In the afternoon, cars filled the drive. Aunt Marjorie stepped out and stopped when she saw me waiting with Finn and Lottie. "Carolyn," she said, voice tilting, "what are you doing here?" I lifted the key. "Opening my house." She gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "I rented this place." "I know." I turned the key. The lock clicked. "I own it. Grandma left it to me in private. She didn't trust what you'd do if you knew." Marjorie's expression rearranged into practiced brightness. "Then it's family property. We should discuss access." "No," I didn't soften it. "You paid for the week, so you can stay. But you don't get to manage it, or me, and you don't get to cut my children out and call it practical." My cousins hovered with suitcases, suddenly quiet. Finn squeezed my fingers. The week was awkward, then revealing, My kids stopped watching faces for permission. They played, swam, and ate on the porch like they belonged. A few relatives apologized. I kept the ones that sounded like truth. Marjorie never apologized. On the last morning, she tried again. "Next summer, we should—" "You can ask," I said. "Or you can go elsewhere." After their taillights vanished, Hazel leaned into my side. "Do we have to be small to belong?" "No," I told her, watching waves smooth the sand. "We just needed our own door, finally."